All right, welcome back. So you might be wondering, what is a variable? Well, variables are like containers, store some data, pull it out later. They can hold all sorts of things like numbers, booleans, and strings, and a lot more that we'll talk about later. Okay, I think that's enough of that for now. So variables in Python are like variables in math. So if you ever took algebra, you probably saw equations that had x's or y's or other letters interspersed inside the equations. It's the same idea here. So our variables hold a value and they have a name. So those are the two key components. So I like to think of them as sort of like jars, like a mason jar. You put something in the jar and then you give it a name, maybe a little piece of tape and a Sharpie to create a label. So this jar says Colt's favorite color, and this jar says berry jam, and this one says, I don't know, tips or whatever. That's the name. And then inside we have data. And that's pretty much as far as that analogy goes. So in Python land, this is what it looks like to create or assign a variable. So this is how we initially tell Python, hey, I want a variable called x. So that's the left part. And I want to set it equal to 100 at the beginning. So variables can change, and we'll talk about that as well. But they have a name on the left, an equal sign, and then a value on the right. And I did say this in the song, if you didn't catch this, they can be all sorts of data types. We've only seen numbers so far, so I'm talking about numbers, but in a bit, we'll see other types of data we can put in variables. So we're not limited to numbers. And then we have a second variable assignment down here, Khaleesi, mother of dragons, equals 1. If you're wondering, that's a Game of Thrones character. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, I wouldn't start it now because you'll get distracted and probably never finish this course. Anyway, the key thing is that we have a name on the left and we're setting it equal to some corresponding value. And then, of course, we can recall those values. Otherwise, variables wouldn't be very useful. So here, we could print Khaleesi, mother of dragons, which is 1, plus x, which is 100, and that results in 101. So this is a silly example for a random slide, of course. You're not going to be doing things like this, but variables are really, really useful. You'll use them in every single program we create from here on out for a couple reasons. One, they can make your code more legible and reusable. You know, we might have a really long piece of text or a really long number like pi that we don't want to have to type out every time. But more importantly, most of our data is not static. A lot of it changes. It might depend on user input, which we'll see later on. So we might not know exactly what x is. So we know it's 100 here, but maybe we're working with a user's password. We don't know what that is. So we have a variable called password, and it's equal to whatever the user typed in. And then we do something with password. Maybe we check it against our database or something. And the idea is that it's not up to us. And so our code needs to be able to work with dynamic data. Okay, so to wrap this slide up, variables always assigned with the variable name on the left and the value on the right of the equal sign. And this, again, is variable assignment. So we have to tell Python, hey, I want a variable called x, set it equal to 100. If we don't assign it first, we can't use it later. It will cause a problem. And in just a minute, I'll show you that. So I'm going to hop over to my terminal and really quickly open up Python 3. Okay. So I'm going to define a variable I'll call num of cats. And let's say that I am crazy and I have 99 cats. Now what I want to show you, yes, we can recall num of cats. And in the Python interpreter, it will show me 99. But in a regular bit of Python code, in a file, like a Python file, if I just wrote the line num of cats, it's not going to print it out. I would need to actually have print num of cats. And you don't really see a difference here, but I'll show you later in the video that there is a significant difference. Okay, so by just recalling num of cats and let's say multiplying by 2, I get 198. But it's important to notice that num of cats is not 198 itself. It's 99. So all that I'm doing is saying, give me what the current value of num of cats is and multiply it by 2. But I'm never saying change num of cats. So that's where we get to the next thing, which is variable reassignment. So variables can be assigned to other variables. So here's an example. Python is awesome equals 100. And I could say just another variable equals Python is awesome. And so then at this point, just another variable is equal to 100. So variables can also be reassigned at any time. So I could change Python is awesome to 1337. So it's no longer equal to 100. I've changed it to 1337. And we can also assign variables at the same time as other variables. So here's an example. And the syntax might be a little weird, but we separate things by commas. So all, comma, at, comma, once equals 5, comma, 10, comma, 15. Well, all is 5, at is 10, and once is 15. Now, I only recommend doing this if the variables make sense to be assigned together. So if they're just arbitrary, these are all arbitrary examples that don't really make sense, but I would only do them in one line if they had something to do with one another. Okay, so let's hop back over here. Now I have num of cats. And if I wanted to, I could update it at any point. So I could manually do it by saying num of cats equals 198. And now if I look at num of cats, it's 198. Okay. But the other thing I want to show you, I'm going to reset it back to 99, is let's say one of my cats passed away. Actually, I don't want to upset anyone. Let's say that I'm giving my cat, it's a kitten, to my sister as a Christmas gift. Num of cats equals 99. Well, I could also say num of cats equals num of cat minus 1. It's equal to the current num of cats minus 1. And now what is num of cats? It's 98. So we could also do something like, let's make a variable friends, and I don't know, my friends could start at 0. I have no friends. But then maybe I decide all my cats are friends. So I could say num of friends equals num of cats. So I'm reassigning friends first of all, but I'm using the value of num of cats to update friends. Num of cats is 98. So right now, friends is also 98. And I'll leave it at that for now. You'll see us use variables all the time. So if you still have a couple of questions about them, we'll probably answer them as we go. But they're really fundamental. Again, it's a way to store data with a name, and that's pretty much it.